His company sells 12 billion cans of beer every year. That's the equivalent of 1,726 full-sized Olympic swimming pools. And every year, he buys enough aluminum for those beer cans to build 4,000 jumbo jets. He was inducted into the Colorado Business Hall of Fame. He ran for U.S. Senate in 2004, and he is the father of 6 children. But this year, he's livid. So livid, he wrote a letter to President Trump. But first, here's what you might have missed in Amazon and e-commerce news this week. Would you believe in a world where a hefty portion of your e-commerce customers are Russians? Well, the prospect is real. Last year, online sales for Russian e-commerce websites swelled 19% over the previous year, reaching 1.5 trillion rubles. Now, if you don't speak Russian currency, that's 18.3 billion USD. Adrian Henney, chief editor of East West Digital News, wrote this: AliExpress dominated the Russian cross-border e-commerce scene. But since 2017, people in the West are seeing a steady rise of sales from Russian customers. That means now is the time to get your product onto the screens of mobile devices and web browsers of Russian buyers. But Seth, only 30% of Russians speak English today. True, but Shopify has every tool you could possibly need for making your product shoppable in the Russian language. Of the world's 7 continents, if you named just one as the next frontier for e-commerce, which would it be? With 54 countries and 1.3 billion people, the greatest minds in e-commerce today are naming Africa as the new frontier for e-commerce. Consider for a moment that a staggering 725 million of those people wield mobile devices. And that is why Ibrahim Oladili co-founded an application that reduces the chances of e-commerce vendors not getting paid for products they sell from their e-commerce website. The application, VezaCash. 3 out of 4 all online services rendered in Africa usually end up either not being paid for in full or they remain completely unpaid. Just put yourself in the shoes of an e-commerce seller. Chances are only 25% of those purchases will come out fully paid. And what I love about this guy, Ibrahim, is because instead of complaining about it, he created a solution. And today, he has 60 merchants and thousands of customers. Africa is on its way. 14 months ago, on May 25, 2018, the European Union implemented a disruptive and what many would consider immensely frustrating new protocol for the use of private information, as everybody knows, as GDPR. GDPR, or more specifically, General Data Protection Regulation, requires online entrepreneurs to provide the same level of protection for things like your IP address or your cookie data as they would for information like your social security number. And according to ecommercenews.eu, since the enforcement of GDPR, page views have fallen, e-commerce website page views have fallen 9.7%, website visits have decreased 9.9%, and online e-commerce revenue has decreased 8.3%. Now, yes, I agree. Privacy of one's personal information has to be of top priority. But is this a classic example of the government going too far in throwing water on the flames of a otherwise thriving economy? And would the fact that if you are a Frenchman living in France and you tag your 10-year-old cousin on Facebook congratulating her on her birthday, you just violated GDPR? Would that be an example of the European Union taking it just a tad too far? I guess with Britain's exit, Brexit, the United Kingdom doesn't have to worry about this anymore. But wait, GDPR is implemented in the UK's DPA law. I would love to know what you think about this. Are you interested in selling on Amazon.in? 6 years ago, Amazon tried hard to win the title as the dominant e-commerce platform in the world's 2nd largest internet user base, and that would be India. Amazon spent $5 billion to carve out their spot in the country of 1.3 billion residents. And the results so far? Amazon now has 30% of India's 44 billion e-commerce pie. Now, Amazon has definitely not dominated the Indian e-commerce marketplace like they have other new territories. And according to Jaideep Parikh, who's an expert in this industry, he puts it this way, quote, the Indian government is protective of small Indian-based traders and manufacturers, end quote. And it's very true. Amazon does not match that profile, and they have had to face humongous challenges in India, not to mention their biggest rival, Flipkart, as well as India's restrictions for outside businesses and new regulations that went into effect just this last February. But Amazon is doing the heavy lifting. This is what we often forget. Amazon is dealing with those government regulations. They're dealing with the competition that we don't even have to think about. And maybe that's why one of our students broke $100,000 a month at 33% profit margin only 7 months after joining Just One Dime's coaching membership and selling only on Amazon India. Look at Amazon as sort of a forced clear, and all you have to do is build your log cabin in the clearing. Question for you, what are you waiting for? And now the businessman who brews so much beer you could fill 1,726 full-sized Olympic swimming pools annually. That would be one heck of a party pool. Peter Hansen Coors wrote a letter, or more accurately, his company wrote a letter to President Trump. And the topic at hand received so much attention that Coors didn't just get a full-page article in the Wall Street Journal, he was asked to write the article himself. Now, what happened? The Molson Coors Brewing Company brews and distributes beer all around the world. Peter Coors owns stock in and works for Molson Coors Brewing Company. The company buys aluminum to can those beers and then ship them all over the world. But in March of 2018, President Trump imposed a tariff, which Coors was very happy about, of 10% on aluminum imported from Canada and Mexico. But then, in May of this year, 2019, President Trump lifted those tariffs, which should mean a 10% drop in the fees, right? Negative. The aluminum suppliers had a meeting behind the barn. They kind of scratched each other's back. They had this little monopolistic meeting, snickered probably a little bit, and they said, hey, look, let's all keep the prices high, as if they were still tariff level, so we can pocket a combined $700 million a year. And in Coors' own words, quote, they are exploiting the aluminum tariffs to profit at the expense of the end user, raising their prices to match tariff prices. It's enraging, and I agree, it's irritating to the core. And Trump said this, you can avoid the tariffs by buying from a non-tariffied country. And Coors' response is, that's not true, because these companies, all they're doing is adding on the 10% so that we still pay the same. Those suppliers are like the monopoly players who buy up the blue real estate. You remember Boardwalk and Park Place? But then Coors does something really mind-boggling. His company urges President Trump to investigate the aluminum industry, look at the conduct of its biggest actors, and provide, end quote, regulatory and legislative oversight. What? When was the last time asking the government to fix your free market problem the solution? Why would you ask the same governmental institution who created the tariffs in the first place to fix your non-tariff issue? Let me put it this way. Have you ever launched a product making you loads of cash that all of a sudden gets squeezed into paper-thin margins because your competitor found a lower cost supplier? And would you go to Amazon and say, hey, Amazon, make sure these competitors have to pay the same price I do? Heck no, you do what I had to do. One of my products was getting squeezed on profit margins, so we traveled to China, we found a new supplier, our profits literally quintupled, and no one can touch us. Find another supplier. What drove Eric Little to run just a little bit faster? His British rival, Harold Abrahams. Who drove Steve Jobs to set themselves apart from every other company? Bill Gates. You have unfair suppliers? I get it. They're relentless, but they are a gift to make you stronger. That's my 10 cents.